Christian, how's it going?
It's going well. It's a beautiful day here in Tempe, Arizona.
I showed you the window. It's like it's actually warm here in Columbus, Ohio right now. It's like 30 degrees, but like earlier in the week it was like 0 and sub-zero, so it was pretty brutal. Um,
It's like 75 here, so 30 degrees doesn't seem that warm.
well, we get cold, but also we don't get like 115 degrees.
That's true. That's
And,
true.
like I've talked to people in Arizona. I'm like, "What do you do like when it's 115 degrees?" They go, "Oh, we just don't go outside." And I'm like, well, doesn't that suck? And they're like, well, what do you do when it's like 0 degrees? I'm like, oh, we just don't go outside. And they're like,
Exactly.
yeah. So, but Christian, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and maybe we can go back to the beginning and hear kind of how this whole thing started. But I'm just interested to hear you explain what you do for people.
Sure. I'm Christian Espinosa. I'm the founder and CEO of Blue Goat Cyber. We help make sure medical devices are secure from hackers. So this could be an implantable, like a pacemaker, a defibrillator, could be a surgical robot, an in vitro diagnostic system,
Hmm.
a patient monitoring system. But we work with device manufacturers to make sure the device is secure so they can get FDA approval. And then once their device is on the market, we help them make sure the device is secure. It's a continuous process.
Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of like worst case scenario, right? You have a medical device and someone was able to somehow like hack into that. Um, what's the movie that I'm thinking of? Where the devices all come to life and they start attacking people. It's like an 80s movie with oh gosh, what's his name?
Terminator?
No, I'll think of it. Don't worry. But that's all right. That's worst case scenario, right? Is that someone could get access to a medical device of some sort?
Worst case scenario is they can get access to the device and kill somebody.
Right.
Like actually, when Dick Cheney was vice president, we all know he had lots of heart problems. He had a defibrillator,
Oh
and
yeah.
he had the wireless capability disabled because there's a legitimate threat. Somebody could wirelessly from a distance connect to his defibrillator and cause it to shock him to death.
Mm. So talk to me about like that's a very very specific field, right? Like you've clearly niched down your business.
Yes.
So how did you arrive at that niche? Maybe talk me through that process. And then I know you have a long history in, the military and technology. I like to go back to the beginning and hear about how life has changed in the cybersecurity world since you started this. But like, how did you find that niche?
I had a cybersecurity company I started in 2014 and sold in 2020. And I made just about every mistake you can make as an entrepreneur. I thought everybody needs cybersecurity, so I tried to sell cybersecurity to everybody, which meant my message was diluted and ultimately nobody bought our services. I mean, some people did, obviously. But we did medical device cybersecurity there. We got a contract for that. That's where it started in 2014. And then I sold that company in 2020, as I mentioned, to a publicly traded company. And that didn't work out very well either. So
The
it was
sale,
a
the sale of the company didn't work out.
no. I sold it for stock. And while I was employed by the parent company, there was all these like continuous rolling blackout periods where I could never sell the stock.
Oh,
And then when I left the company, because I'm like, screw it, I need to leave and sell the stock was like at $5 and it quickly went down to 8 cents. And I could only sell
oh,
so many shares a day. So
uh,
imagine thinking, you know, all these shares times $5 is a lot different than all these shares times 8 cents, right? So
it's funny you say that because just literally like the last podcast that I was on, um, the individual was talking about they were part of a startup and the startup was like getting these valuations and they had a good chunk of the ownership and it was they didn't specifically say what the value of it was worth, but I was thinking it's like 10, 15, 20 million. In a very similar story, like they had to restructure the business and eventually those shares became worthless. And I was like, what was life like, thinking, oh, I got 20 million in my pocket and then it goes down to like almost nothing. It's interesting because it's a very, very similar story.
yeah, it to me it's like, I guess this is one of those expensive lessons I had to learn, and now I know it's been beat into me that I'm not going to do it the same way again. So
Well, that's
yeah, I worked for the parent company, uh, and I sold my company for stock. I went over that. While I was at the parent company in 2022, I developed 6 blood clots in my left leg,
mm,
and thanks to a portable Doppler ultrasound medical device, I was quickly diagnosed And I may not be here if it wasn't for that device. But I went through like a whole year of depression, and I was basically told I couldn't do anything I like to do. Before that, I literally the day before I went to the hospital, I did like 120 burpees and a bunch of push-ups and a bunch of ab work and a bunch of fitness routine. And I'd done 24 Ironman triathlons. I was in pretty good shape, so thinking about blood clots was not on my radar.
Right.
And at the hospital, they told me I couldn't run, I couldn't go on a hike, I couldn't sit in a hot tub, I couldn't travel. Like basically everything I like to do, I couldn't do. So I went through about a year of depression, trying to reconcile that. And one day I was looking at the bottle of blood thinners they gave me, and I just like threw it across the room. And I'm like, screw it, I'm not taking these things anymore. I'm gonna go get all my blood work done. I'm gonna go get another Doppler ultrasound and reclaim my health. And that gave me the courage, that decision to reclaim my health and not just sit on the couch, gave me the courage to start a new company. It's amazing, like, a small decision may seem like a small decision, but it leads to bigger decisions because it changes your mindset. And I thought with this company, I need to niche it down because that's one of the lessons I learned with my first company. And why not leverage the experience I had from my first company with medical devices? Because the universe basically told me if it wasn't for a medical device, like if that device was recalled because of a hack, I may not have been diagnosed and could have a stroke or could have died. So yeah.
Just to go back to that sale to a public company, that's a pretty wild. I don't think I've ever had anybody say that. What was that process like? I gotta imagine the amount of paperwork that you did for something like that was monumental.
Yeah, I had to form a team with a legal and accounting, basically, a CPA, because when I first looked at the paperwork, I was going to have to pay capital gains tax on the sale.
Right.
So I had to form what I think is called a reverse triangle entity in order to avoid the capital gains. But it's a way like my company is bought by a different company, which is then bought by the parent company, and it's like this weird transaction to avoid the taxes.
In a reverse triangle, the acquirer creates a subsidiary that merges into the selling entity and then liquidates, leaving the selling entity as the surviving entity and a subsidiary of the acquirer. I don't even think I just followed what that said. I
That's
read
exactly
it,
what I did.
Yeah.
What that was, yes.
You go, so how do I get the money into my pocket? That's all I really am concerned with.
Well, the reverse triangle avoids you having to pay all that tax because
Right.
I sold my company for stock. And if I would have just sold it directly without the reverse triangle, I would have had to pay for the basis of my company's worth to what I sold it to. I would have had to pay all that tax. Which,
Right.
if I'm getting selling for stock, I'm not getting capital.
You don't have cash, right?
To pay. So it's like this ridiculous scenario.
Yeah, it's the old Elon Musk where he hasn't sold the stock, he hasn't created the profit yet, and Elizabeth Warren saying he needs to pay more, and Elon's like, I've paid more in taxes than any human being that's ever lived. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. That's funny. So, but you got to be thinking like, man, this is it. Like, this was the accomplishment that I was working towards, right?
This was during COVID, so I was getting very like burnt out and antsy because my first cybersecurity business, about 40% of our revenue was in-person training, and all that went off the table. And I had many offers to buy my company, but I just decided to take that one. It felt like I was aligned with a company. The company that bought mine was called Cerberus Sentinel at the time. I have a patent on a device called Cerberus. When I was in the military in the Air Force Academy, my squadron was Cerberus. So I kind of thought, Cerberus is a three-headed dog. There's the three things, right? Yeah. I convinced myself logically to sell that company, and it was. I don't know if it was a wrong decision, but it was definitely a learning moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, going back, it sounds like you'd say, sure, we can do a little bit of stock, but I need some cash. I need some cash up front. Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. So you were in the military. Like, how did your career in cybersecurity emerge? Like, what was the origin of this? Because I'm thinking about like when I was a kid, and you look like you're a little bit older than I am, but when I was a kid, cybersecurity, like that's not a word I ever heard. It feels like that's really like the last decade, maybe decade and a half that people are really thinking about that. When did it become like something you thought could be your career?
I joined the military because I wanted to fly jets, like Tom Cruise and Top Gun. Top Gun was my impetus to join the military.
Yep.
I joined the Air Force because I didn't want to be on an aircraft carrier, and then they cut all the pilot slots. So my fallback career was communications. So since I didn't become a pilot, I did communications, and within communications, I did what's called information assurance back then, which is just a different name for cybersecurity. Uh, and I was responsible for protecting classified, top secret and secret networks from nation states trying to steal our secrets. And then I just leveraged that experience when I separated from active duty after 6 years in the commercial world.
So obviously, yeah, security and cybersecurity. I mean, that probably started basically in the military, right?
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. So within that, like, were they training you on cybersecurity? Is that like where you got your kind of education in cybersecurity, or did you have some sort of a background in that? And they go, "Oh, this kid's, he's looked at this thing before. Let's push him in that."
I majored in electrical engineering, which was one of the requirements to become a communications officer in the military. You had to have a certain degree, but that wasn't. It didn't involve cybersecurity. I had to go to 5 months of school in Biloxi, Mississippi. Through that, we learned some of like attacks and defending against programs. But that was really at the beginning of cybersecurity when it first started to hit the radar. And then after that, I had to learn a lot of it on my own.
Interesting. Yeah. So what year was that you kind of went to Biloxi?
That was 1993.
So what? Talk to me about the difference between what cybersecurity was at that time versus like more current cybersecurity. How different of a world are we talking about?
Drastically different. Back then, we were worried about protecting classified data. There weren't even like that many websites that accepted credit cards or e-commerce. A lot of medical records were still analog. So it was very different. And now everything is interconnected. Medical devices are connected to everything. We have cyber physical systems, as we call it. We have autonomous driving cars. We have surgical robots. We have autonomous flying taxis in Dubai. So we have all these things that, if they're compromised, it's much more risky than just a data disclosure. These things can actually kill somebody.
Maximum Overdrive was the name of the movie, by the way. Have you haven't
Oh.
seen Maximum Overdrive? Oh, Christian, this is right up your alley, man. It's like a kind of cheesy '80s movie, but it's worth watching. There's
I
also
don't think
like
I've seen it.
it's actually a Stephen King book, but there's also like machines that are clearly not like computer interfaces. There's like cars that are like blowing smoke, and you're like, there's no computer in here. Like, how would this? I think it's like I don't. I think the planet or the aliens or something. I can't even remember how they take over these machines. But no, it's so good.
That's it. Maybe I'll put it on my list for tonight to watch.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be right up your alley, my man. But yeah, that's fascinating that the U.S. government probably has had to change so much. And just as things go on more digital, I imagine that there's been a lot of times where people are not prepared. Would you say that we're still in that window where people are not prepared for kind of the coming cyber revolution and like how dangerous some of these like security faults might end up being?
I would say 95% of us are not prepared, including DoD organizations.
Right. Okay, so talk me through that. 95% of people are unprepared. Where are the most obvious like concerns? Maybe talk to me a high level and then, break it down to the individual. Like, sure, I don't want government secrets to get stolen except for the UFO stuff. I need to figure out what's going on with the UFOs.
Of
But
course.
but that doesn't affect me that much. So like break it down for me. Give me like government level concerns, business level concerns, human fundamental level concerns.
Well, with government level concerns, the government's been horrible at protecting data. All of my information has been stolen from the government multiple times by nation state actors that infiltrate a government environment and stay on that environment for like, I think in one case it was like 8 years before they were detected. So imagine like a criminal being in your house for 8 years. Like you go to work, and they come out and go through everything, and you come back, they hide in the closet. It's kind of like what it is on these government networks.
So when you say nation state, what does that mean? A country is kind of controlling that, managing it?
One of our enemies in the cyber war, such as China, they have campaigns that they back to steal our intellectual property, to steal our data and use it to their benefit.
Mm-hmm. And do you get the impression that that is backed by the Chinese government? They're allowing that to happen? I know we're talking very high level right now, and maybe we don't have all the answers because, right, like, don't know who exactly some of these actors are. But what does that end up looking like from a structure standpoint, from what you understand?
From a structure standpoint, it looks very military-ish. They have organizations that this is their job, this is their mission, to steal our data. And it doesn't just involve DoD, it involves DoD contractors, as example. And there's a case with this where, let's say we invest $10 million into how to develop the latest stealth bomber, but an adversary can invest 500,000 in a campaign to steal that $10,000 worth of intellectual property that took us $10 million to generate. Now they have that technology and they can create that stealth bomber for a lot cheaper than us.
Right, because they didn't.
And
have
that's
to do
just
the
one
R&D.
example. It's not just a stealth bomber. It's pretty much any innovation in the U.S. You have to think of this a little more massively or holistically. Like, if I want to become a superpower and I've got one country that spends a lot of money on innovative technology or innovative ideas, if I can have a campaign to spend less money to steal that technology, then I can use that technology and that intellectual property to become a superpower quicker than they can. And I can sell these things cheaper than they can sell because it costs me less to make the product or produce the technology.
It's a business decision almost.
It's very much a business decision. We have to look at the return on investment.
Interesting. So they would be doing that both on a government level and then maybe. So that's probably a concern for the U.S. government, of course, but their top level concern is probably what, like military secrets, military codes, where nuclear bases are and things like that.
I think one of the biggest concerns that's often overlooked is the critical infrastructure.
Okay.
So if we had to think of this from, we're kind of focused on cyber warfare, I guess, and warfare, but if I'm an adversary and I have control of your electric grid, and let's say I want to fly a bombing mission over your country, and you've got surface air missiles and radar and all this stuff, if I can take out your electrical grid before I launch that attack, now you're blind to my jets flying over your country, dropping bombs and doing whatever they want to do. So we have to look at from an overall planning perspective, these things tie together.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't think of these scenarios. It's like, oh, it's just electrical grid. What's the big deal? But just taking that out can cause a lot of havoc. But combine that with something else, it can have very devastating results.
Isn't there a lot of concern about the United States electrical grid also? That's something that I hear in kind of the media, but I have no knowledge of how true that is.
There are a lot of concerns. I'm prepared. If the electrical grid goes out, I'm prepared. So, yeah. There's also some concerns about an adversary having a EMP, electromagnetic pulse that takes out everything with a battery.
So what kind of things would the U.S. government be doing to fight that? And I know I'm asking a lot of military strategy type questions, but I just want to know, what kind of things would the U.S. government be doing to kind of fight that? Because as we said, the grid is sort of just this big thing. How would you even protect that?
Well, that's part of the challenge. With the grid, a lot of the grid is commercially owned, privately owned. So in order to fight something like an EMP, they have to see how likely is this, and where is it going to happen, and how do we shield the devices we want to protect.
Okay.
So it'd be along those lines. And how do we even detect if someone's going to launch, a rocket with an EMP?
And how much of a different world is the United States living in versus someone like China, where all these private companies are sort of private, right? But they're also like sort of owned by the Chinese government. I mean, it's January 17th and the TikTok ban just got upheld. So I think that TikTok's supposed to have its last day, like, tomorrow or Sunday or something.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion on it, honestly. Maybe I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that. But these Chinese like companies are sort of owned by the government, whereas our companies are like, screw you, U.S. government, you don't get any of my information. Stay out of my business, right?
That's right. I had a team member of mine go to China not too long ago, and we're well aware of what happens in China. So he took a laptop with like nothing on it.
Okay.
Because you just
When you say well aware of what happens in China, what's that mean to you?
it means any device you take into China is going to be fully compromised, and any data on that device is going to be fully stolen.
Do you mean as an American citizen or as just anybody?
As anybody,
Just connecting to a Wi-Fi network or what?
just bringing the device over there. So, as an example, he brought his laptop over there, and there's nothing on it. And he installed some logging software. He left his laptop in his hotel for like, I think it was an hour and a half. I think he went downstairs for dinner. He came back. His laptop looked the same, but he looked at his logs. Someone logged on with one attempt with his username and password and did whatever they wanted to do on his laptop. And it wasn't him. It was while he was at dinner. So you have to ask yourself, how do they log on with one attempt? And when he came back to the U.S., on multiple clothes that he wore while he was over there was a tracker device in the clothing.
Whoa.
Yes.
Hold on a minute. This is a cybersecurity professional, I'm guessing, or
Yeah, well, he is a cybersecurity professional. That's why he didn't have any sensitive data on the laptop, why he had the logging. But he also knew to check his clothing.
yeah, I'm just thinking like if Alex goes to China, like, do they care? Are they gonna like put things inside of my clothing, or it was that more targeted? Because that's pretty intense.
I kind of think that's the norm, but maybe
Really?
because most of my friends are cybersecurity people that go over there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's targeted, but maybe it's the norm. I don't know.
That person who logged into his laptop, do you think that was remote? Or are you insinuating someone got into his hotel room and did that?
They got in his hotel room and did that. It's physical.
You think they did? Oh, wow.
They had to. It was an interactive login. Yeah. And I've had friends of mine go over there and hide cameras in their hotel room. And when they went somewhere, just like my team member, the cleaning service or somebody would come into the hotel, open the laptop up, plug something in, and do something, then leave. And it looked like nothing happened, but he had like these hidden cameras to record what actually happened.
Whoa. So this is just kind of like common practice.
Common practice if you're aware of it. Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy.
If you don't have the awareness, you would never know it happened.
That's pretty intense. Yeah, I mean, I don't think an American citizen could. That would be like front page news if, like, someone from Mexico visited the United States on a travel trip and the CIA was like spying on them and getting into their hotel room and stealing data. I mean, that would be pretty intense.
Only if they noticed, right?
True. Yeah, absolutely. But if you're saying you got camera footage of it, obviously. Okay, so then let's go one layer down. What are the fears as a business? Obviously, that's what your business is in. I assume it's helping businesses alleviate their security concerns. But what are the things that businesses are ill prepared for?
I think a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, think they're not a target. But the reality is it's a business to the cyber criminals. And if they can extort you for money through ransomware, they're going to do that. So I think it's a little bit of naivety thinking we're not a target. And I think you should be prepared that you are a target, because a lot of the cyber criminals have automated tools that just scan for vulnerable companies. It's not like they're targeting you specifically, but if you happen to be one of those vulnerable companies, you're going to be exploited. And I think the statistic is it's over 80% of businesses go out of business after a cyber attack.
Jeez, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's very costly.
Yeah, I mean, we get hit with phishing emails all the time. Like
Sure.
some of them are well done, some of them are not so well done, right? Some of them they'll just change like the name on Gmail to like, our CFO's name, and then it'll email to me and be like, "Hey, change my banking information." Like that happens literally every single day.
Right.
But then you look at their email and it's like Dave Smith 777. You're like, okay, well this is not my CFO. But some of them are better than that. Some of them are pretty intense, and sometimes they'll have usernames that are very close to our URL, or they'll buy a URL that's like one letter
Yep.
off. And I don't want to say we've ever came close to getting hit by one of these, but we definitely have invested in at least insurance. We have like a good amount of cybersecurity insurance and methods and means. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really a matter of time kind of thing. So what would a company like mine? Obviously, I have like a small to medium sized company. I think there's probably different risks for my company versus, that public company that you sold to. What are kind of the things that you'd recommend to both of those entities?
I think it's important to do the fundamentals.
Okay.
Most cybersecurity professionals are not the best communicators, and they want to show how smart they are. So they'll tell you to do like 100 things, and it's impossible to do 100 things if you're a small business.
Mm-hmm.
The things you should do should be ranked by which will reduce the risk the most.
Mm-hmm.
And these are simple things like patch your systems, patch your applications, make sure you have secure configurations, you change your default passwords, use two-factor authentication. These are relatively simple things, but most people look at that 100-point checklist that's given by a quote cybersecurity professional and do like a little bit of all of it, sort of half-assed, versus do the things that matter, like the top 5, like full on.
What do you mean by patch? What is that?
Like, for instance, I do a lot of Zoom meetings with people, and they'll share their screen. Their Chrome will say, relaunch Chrome to update or something.
Okay.
So that it's like doing the updates on your system and your applications on your system.
Because they are ostensibly updating the system because maybe it's a cybersecurity issue, but they have updates that people have, seen are necessary. So if you don't update it, that old hacking method might work.
100%. Yeah. So when I've done a lot of, we call it penetration testing or white hat hacking, trying to break into companies. And if there's a unpatched system, it's the easiest way in. Always.
So could it be one user? That's all you need is one person in the company who hasn't maybe updated their computer. Like, maybe talk me through it. Talk me through this, okay? So, like, you're going to hack into my system or somebody's system. What are the things you're going to attempt to do? You're probably not going to get into my hotel room and plug in something, right? So what does it look like? What are the ways that people go about doing this?
There's several things. First off, I'd start with some reconnaissance. So some intelligence gathering. So I would scrape the internet to see how many people in your company have information on the internet, and grab their email addresses, as much as I can about them.
That's pretty easy, just like LinkedIn kind of, then check for Facebook, stuff like that.
That, and there's also tools you can use that will say, one of your employees will say, John Adams, here's a password that was found on the dark web.
Ooh.
So then most people use the same password. If there's a way that John Adams can log on remotely to your environment, I would try that password or the ones I found to log into your environment, and that would be a way in. That's one method. I'd also scan all of your internet-facing systems and see if there's a way in through one of those, and then do a phishing campaign much more targeted than the ones you're talking about with spellings. We've been like 100% successful breaking into some environment if we can use a phishing campaign combined with what's called a vishing or telephone campaign.
Oh.
If we've been able to use both those, we've been successful.
So
we'll send a phishing email that'll say, you need to go here and log on because there's been a data breach, blah, 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 whatever tactic. And then we'll follow up and say, this is so-and-so from IT. Just want to let you know that's not a phishing email. We had a data breach and we
Oh.
need you to do this.
Oh. Interesting. So would you call from their supposed internal IT team?
Yes, just use an app on your phone to spoof the number.
Ah.
That, and there's also the tactic which always works, even today, where we simply peruse your parking lot and drop a bunch of thumb drives that are infected, with the idea somebody will pick one up, and we could put
Throw it
like
onto their
a
laptop.
note on the thumb drive, like Sally's vacation pictures or something that somebody might find curious,
Oh
and put
gosh.
it in there, and then infect their computer that way.
Oh, you said that works every time?
Yes.
That's crazy. Like, well, I mean, clearly these different scams and schemes work, or else I wouldn't get emailed by them. And I mean, maybe it's just a law of large numbers. They send out, 10,000 emails, they'll get one, and it's probably just some program that automatically sends out these emails.
It
But
is, yeah.
wow, that's tough. So, how do you coach people up on avoiding that at like a company level?
So I think one of the challenges is a lot of CEOs or company leadership, they just sort of tune out when you say cybersecurity. I think they need to tune in more. Just like, I'm a CEO, a founder of a business. I had to learn marketing, I had to learn sales, I had to learn accounting, and today we have to learn about cybersecurity as well.
Mm.
So it's like becoming this mandatory thing we have to learn about, just like these other things, in order to succeed in business.
Well, you're a professor of cybersecurity, correct?
I used to be, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did that curriculum look like? Was it teaching more in depth, or was it just like, hey, if you're going to go out and be, corporate citizens of the world, you need to learn about these things?
That was a super frustrating experience
Oh, okay. Why is that?
because I'm a cybersecurity professional. I do white hat hacking, like I'm a good hacker, hacker for good or whatever. And the classes I taught in college, and this includes master's level and bachelor's level, were about white hat hacking and how to do it.
Okay.
So I made the classes, I developed the curriculum very realistic. Like this is what you do as a practitioner.
Right.
And students incessantly complained and said it was too hard. I had people majoring in cybersecurity and how to like hack into things that couldn't use a computer. And it basically made me realize, this is part of the reason we suck at cybersecurity.
Mm.
We have these curriculums where people just want to check a box and get a degree in cybersecurity and get a job and not actually know anything about it.
Mm.
And that became super clear when I was a professor.
It's kind
I
of
mean, I would be in a master's level penetration testing course, like teaching people how to hack. And I had people that, you're supposed to demonstrate mastery over the topic, right? That's the whole master's part
right,
of it.
right.
I had people that could barely log on to their computer. And I'm like, what are you doing in this class?
Mm.
They're like, well, the last professor, didn't ask us to do any hands-on exercises. It was just all like write papers about theory stuff. I'm like, who gives a crap about the theory? What matters is like, can you actually do the job?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
do you understand? Because theory is drastically different than reality.
It's funny you say that because that was a lot of my collegiate experience in a totally different field, but I had an entrepreneurship degree. And I would just get so frustrated with these like case studies, and they had these video games that you could play where you started a coffee bar. And I'm just like, why don't you just tell the kids to go start a business? Like, it just seems like we're doing all of this weird stuff in between that is not actually the reality of what we're attempting to do. I was like, well, kids don't have startup money. I'm like, great. You start without any startup money. You can get $5, you can get $10, you can get $20. Like, that's business. You don't have the startup funds. Like, figure it
Exactly.
out. And that's what I did. And that's, what I credit to being where I am is because I actually just went out and I started a company while I was in college. And then when I went back to the classes and they're talking about, legal stuff or accounting, I'm like, yeah, this all makes a lot of sense. I'm like actually actively doing this stuff. And I
Yeah.
just felt like it almost did the exact opposite of what we were attempting to have happen, which was a condition kids to think starting a business is this crazy big endeavor. You could not ever possibly do it. That's why we're simulating it. It's like a simulated fight. Like, you can't get into a real fight, so we have to simulate the fight. It's like, what? No. Well, if you want to become a
It's not
fight,
really going to prepare you very well.
if you want to be a fighter, like, you got to get hit in the face sometimes and figure out what that's
Exactly.
like. So that was an issue I had. Different topic and different thing, but it's interesting you say you think that's part of why we're not very good at this field.
Well, I wrote about this in my first book, and I just use this analogy. Like, if I want to become a hair professional, like a hairstylist in the state of Arkansas, which I grew up in, I have to go through 1,500 hours of training. 1,500, right?
1,500, goodness me.
If I want to become a cybersecurity professional, all I have to do is go take like a 50 question multiple choice test, pass the test, and now I'm certified, and an employer will hire me, and now I'm protecting your medical records.
Jeez.
Yeah, isn't that a little bit backwards? Like, my hair will go back if I get a bad haircut.
Yeah.
If all my medical records are stolen, it's going to make a lot of people's lives very challenging and very difficult for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, how often are we getting emails? It's like, your data has been breached. Now it's just, I'm just like, delete. I'm like, delete. You know, like, what am I going to do now?
Well, you got probably like free 44 years of credit monitoring services, you know.
Yeah, no, I do. No, it's actually funny you say that. Someone bought a car in my name, and I don't even know to this day how they were able to do this. They bought, I think it was like a $66,000 Challenger in my name. It actually went as well as it possibly could. I was going through a mortgage app, and my mortgage broker was like, "Hey, what's up with this new car loan that you have?" And I'm like, "I bought a car like 2 years ago, but I paid it off. Like, it wasn't very expensive." And he was like, "Oh, well, there's a $66,000 Challenger loan that you opened up like." It was fortunate that I caught it pretty early. He's like, "It was opened like 30 days ago," and I was like, "Yeah, I didn't do that." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he just went on with the mortgage, and he let me get the mortgage. So I was like, this seems like a gap. Anyways, but so I logged on, and Capital One, sure enough, it originated from Capital One. And I was actually lucky because Capital One was my bank. So I reached out to them. I said, "This is fraudulent. I didn't buy the $66,000 Challenger. You know, sorry to be a hater, but that's not the car that I would buy anyways, guys." And they're like, "Okay, you got to fill out these forms. You got to file a police report." I filed the police report. The police were just like, this was in Illinois, so like, we really can't do anything. And then Capital One sided with me eventually, and it just got totally erased off of my credit score. So I was like, wow, that went as well as it possibly could. So I have all the credit monitoring.
But somebody has that $66,000 Challenger out there now,
I
right?
don't know. So what I asked the police officer, I'm like, what will happen? And he's like, probably what's going to happen is that it'll eventually come back to the dealership because they took out this loan, right? And then they paid off the dealership ostensibly. But Capital One's like, no, we need our money back. Like, Capital One, I think, is going to get their money back.
Oh, I see.
So he said that most likely what will happen is that dealership will have an insurance policy that insures them on this. But you always have to show your driver's license when you buy a vehicle. So my thing was like, even if they had my name and my social, how did they have my driver's license or a driver's license? Did the dealership just like goof on that or what?
No, they could have easily had a machine that
made one. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, then talk to me about like on a personal level. Like, we talked a little government, we talked a little business. What about on a personal level? Like, what are the things that are concerns for, everyday folks?
I think concerns for everyday people are the scams that you might fall for. There's a lot of them out there. I get a few of them. Most of them go to spam, but I got one the other day, and this is a pretty popular one where you'll get an email. It'll have your name, maybe one of your passwords in it. And it'll say they caught you doing, naughty things. They've got a camera on your computer. You've probably seen these.
I've gotten that one.
And you got to pay this amount of money for it to go away, or they'll let all your contacts know.
Yeah, they're gonna let my family see the pictures.
And I've actually done the math, and this is very easy to set up. Like if I was a black hat hacker or a bad guy, I could make a lot of money with these campaigns because it's very easy to grab compromised data off the dark web. Like here's all the email addresses. Here's the name. Here's all the passwords. And then you craft an email, just fill in the variables using an email tool. Like I could do it with HubSpot or, any email generation tool, MailChimp or whatever. And I send it to everybody. And then if 5% of the people fall for it, but I send it to 100,000 people and I ask for a certain amount of money, then I'm going to make some money, right? Because some people would rather just pay the money. If you make the amount small enough, some people are like, I'm just going to pay this just to be safe, right?
You got to pay in Bitcoin. It's always Bitcoin they want.
It's always Bitcoin, yeah. So I think scams like that are a big thing. And then I also think today, like my cousin, I went to his house in Denver, and I have an app on my phone to scan the network to see how many devices are on there and see what they are.
Okay.
He had like 37 devices on his home network. Like his light bulbs are like connected to his Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
He's got like the Google, whatever that thing is you talk to, his TV, cameras and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this is a lot of items that may have a vulnerability that somebody may be into.
So what's the fear with, the Google Pixel or his smart lights?
The fear is there's just one more way that an attacker can get into your environment. All these things have vulnerabilities, and you have to patch all these things, or make sure they're all patched and make sure they're all properly configured. And some of these devices, have Bluetooth as well, so somebody can connect Bluetooth and then maybe leverage that to connect to something else. Some of these devices have cameras, so they can turn the cameras on when you don't know they're on. The risk is too much for me. Like I would never have that Google Pixel or anything you talk to. I would never have one of those devices in my house.
Why not?
I can grab the remote control and turn the TV on. I don't need to say, "Hey Google, turn the TV on." That's way too risky for me. A device always listening and sending that data somewhere else. That's above my risk appetite.
What is I'll be candid. I have an Alexa. I have it, and my stance is like I'm not really doing anything that like. So what? Google needs to hear me like watching the Cleveland Cavaliers play basketball. Like, who cares? So what would be like? Why would you be fearful of that? Obviously, you're a cybersecurity professional, so there's some other stuff that comes along with it. But for like me, why would I not want to have an Alexa?
Well, you got basically a third party always listening and eavesdropping on you. So I'm sure there's certain things you discuss that you probably don't want to be made public. I'm sure there's certain things that you discuss that might flag somebody to like maybe check you out later because jokingly talked about, killing the president or whatever, right? And the jokingly part didn't go in the translation. So all of a sudden now you're flagged and you're on this database over here of potential people that might kill the president. It's just a lot of risk and things that I'm not comfortable with.
So is your concern that Amazon owns that data and that data like has to be given to the U.S. government? So, right, like I listened to the Edward Snowden interview, and he talked about he worked for AT&T. That was like his account, and he's like, we literally had like a room where the wires went into the room, and then we had our stuff in the middle, like our government. I think he was NSA. He's like, we had our NSA room, and AT&T was not allowed in that room. And then the wires come out the other side, and it's like it continues on. Are you fearful that that is true at Amazon? And then also, or are you more fearful that some hacker can somehow get into that system and listen in?
Yeah, it's really both. You got there's three aspects, I guess. You got to like look at, okay, who at Amazon has access to this, and what clearance level do they have? How are they vetted? How secure is the system they use? Because that system could be compromised and access your data. And then, what if a criminal hacks into the Amazon and gets the data? And then what about the government?
So you're saying basically, yes, you're concerned about all levels of that.
Well, I think a lot of this stuff was highlighted during COVID, where any information somehow you said people knew about and suppressed it or used it in certain ways. And and then altered messages that you received. It's also like there's a TED talk on this a long time ago. I forgot the name of it. It's like something bubble, but maybe information bubble. But if you're always being monitored, and that information is used in a way where whenever you turn something on or you see information, it's only displaying certain things to you based on this algorithm, then you're not really getting a true
Correct.
view of the world
Yeah.
or true information. You're getting information tailored to get you to take some sort of response or to take some sort of action.
Yeah. You're seeing the world through a filter. You just don't necessarily know it. You think you are seeing everything, but you're not actually seeing everything.
And that happens like on a daily basis. You go to Facebook, they're going to show you certain things. You go to Instagram,
Right.
show you certain things. But it's a more of a macro level. If you're constantly being monitored, then you turn your television on and only certain things are displayed or whatever. I'm kind of making this a little bit bigger than it probably is. But these things seem minor until they become like a major thing.
Okay, so what would you recommend then, someone from like the home technology perspective, just to go more old school, like less monitoring?
I would recommend that you like things like Alexa. I mean, if you want to use it, that's fine. I'm not advocating you don't use it. I just think you should understand what the potential risks are. And if you're into the whole home automation, understand the risks with that too, because there's been plenty of people that have compromised like your thermostat, and we've done that, and turn the place up to like 100 degrees or whatever, or turn it down to
How do you get
super
into
low.
somebody's thermostat?
You get into their Wi-Fi, and then if it's not secure, then you get into the thermostat.
So how would you? Okay, so you get into the Wi-Fi, and the thermostat is connected to the Wi-Fi.
Right. Like here, I live in a condo, and if I like look at the Wi-Fi networks, there's like
There's a bunch of
I
them.
don't know, like 100, right?
Yeah.
I haven't tried to hack into them, but I could probably get into 50 of them.
How?
There's this thing where you try to join the network,
Yep.
and you grab this handshake that attempts to happen between you joining the network and not. And the way to do this is, I'm getting a little bit technical here, but you find a device that's on that network, and you flood it so it gets kicked off like a legitimate device. Then when it authenticates, you capture that data.
Oh.
In there is called a handshake. You run that handshake through a tool that then will spit out the passphrase for the SSID.
Oh.
So you basically run this tool that kicks a device that's connected, like let's say it's a TV to the Wi-Fi. That device gets kicked off, then it naturally has to reauthenticate, and you listen in, intercept that authentication, and then even though it's protected, you can run, once you capture that, what's called the handshake, through a tool that will translate that handshake to the clear text password. And then I just log on to the Wi-Fi network, scan all the devices, find what's vulnerable, and can hop around from device to device.
That doesn't sound like that hard of a process.
It's not.
Okay.
And we've done this like in many environments, and 90% of the time, probably 95% of the time, it works.
Oh, interesting. And is that because certain devices on that network are less secure? Like maybe that thermostat is like the security level on that is just not nearly as high? Or is it just that the system kind of as a whole and your background, you can kind of do these things?
It's a vulnerability with WPA2 for Wi-Fi, which most people will still use.
And what is that?
Like when you set up your wireless access point, you have to set up what kind of protocol you want it to use, and most people are using WPA2. So it's like behind. It's like the protocol like under like the just Wi-Fi itself.
Yeah, it's just like an older protocol.
It's not that old, but it's relatively old. But yeah, that has a vulnerability.
How would people even know what they're running? I have no idea.
You'd have to go to your router and see what the settings are, or go to your device and expand on that. Like if you go to your laptop, you should hit expand. It should tell you what you're connected on. Like mine is WPA3. I just looked at it. So if you go like your Wi-Fi connections and expand it, you should be able to look at all the properties. It should tell you the SSID, the Wi-Fi protocol, your security type, which mine is WPA3. If yours is WPA2, then you have that vulnerability.
I don't even see any of that. I see TCP, IP, DNS, WINS, proxies, hardware. I see my IP address and router, but yeah, I don't even see any of those. That's so
Are
interesting.
you on a?
I'm on a Mac, an iMac.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Remember exactly where to find it on the Mac.
Interesting. So, someone would have to kind of like actually want to like get onto your network, though, right? Like that's probably not someone in Jamaica who's doing that, right?
Well, they have to be in proximity to your Wi-Fi network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you can,
I mean, a lot of hackers do this stuff for fun, just to see if they can do it. You know,
Right.
not like the cyber criminals do it to make money, but a lot of hackers just do it for fun. You know,
Right.
it's illegal, but it doesn't stop most hackers because it's highly unlikely they'll get caught.
Right. You said it's illegal. I guess I never really thought about that. So it is illegal. Like it'd be illegal for you to come to my parking lot and then like log into my Wi-Fi. Is that like trespassing? Is that kind of how it's thought of?
If your Wi-Fi is open,
No, it's got a password, but you got this method.
then yeah, it would be illegal. I'd be like virtually, breaking into your environment,
I see.
breaking and entering. Yeah.
Oh, so it's like a breaking and entering kind of thing. So what would you do then, like hypothetically, if you were able to do that and you're looking to cause damage? You could go drive by my parking lot and park, and I'm a solicitor. I was just waiting to walk inside. Like, what would you do then once you're inside, whether it be my house or like my business?
Well, it depends. If I am just curious, I might see if your laptop or your computer is vulnerable and log into that or break into that, and then steal, any passwords you have off of there, and then go to one of your bank accounts and or your Venmo or whatever, and try to maybe cipher that money somewhere else.
So you took my password from one of my devices?
Yeah,
That
or
same method that you discussed, like you can kind of kick it out, and then as it tries to rejoin, you can kind of catch that data.
Yeah. So, like I said, most people use the same password. So if I have a vulnerability on your laptop, and I can run a certain tool, I can grab the password from memory and then dump it to a file, and then I can use that password on various sites that I think you're using, or I have your browser history. I know you're using them.
Ooh.
And see what I can do.
So you could look at my browser history, see what bank I use, and then maybe just try the usernames and logins that I've used from other places.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
what a lot of people. That's what a lot of hackers do. They grab one set of credentials and they just kind of spray it across a bunch of different sites and see if they get into one.
So what can people do kind of on an individual level? I know you said, maybe avoiding some of those home kind of automation type things. What are the other things that you recommend for people?
I recommend two-factor authentication wherever possible. So if somebody has to log in, if they log into something with your username and password, they steal it, you'll get a text message on your phone, or you'll have to use a Google Authenticator app or something else.
Yeah.
So I certainly recommend that. I also recommend I think the saying is like, know thyself. Most people, and I've taught like cybersecurity classes all over the world and been doing this for a long time. Most people have no idea what is on their internal home network. And even my cousin.
You can count me in that. I don't know. My Alexa, my laptop, maybe my TV.
Yeah, so I run a tool. It's called Fing, F-I-N-G, on my phone. I connect to Wi-Fi. I run this tool. It tells me every single device that's on your network.
Okay.
So then if you have a device that, like, what is that?
Oh, like something that you don't recognize.
Yeah, is that like something that I bought and forgot about, or something somebody put on my network and I don't even know? Or is that the hacker in the parking lot connected to my Wi-Fi? Or is that my neighbor that's just getting free Wi-Fi from me? It gives you some awareness, and then you can run these things down.
Interesting.
Because over time, we just keep adding things to our home network, and after a while, we've got like 40 devices, and we don't even remember.
Yeah, like you.
And then if we have children or a spouse, they may add something, and that's even more dangerous because now they added something. Did they add it correctly? Did they secure it? Did they update it? There's a lot of challenges.
Mm, that's fascinating. Yeah, there's so much out there, and I think someone like me, like, and I'm pretty tech savvy. I know what's going on, um, but there's just so many things that I didn't even know about. I wouldn't had no idea how easy it can be to get into someone's Wi-Fi and start poking around and steal passwords off of it from the end. What are the things that keep you up at night? What are the things that you're like legitimately like afraid of and or worried about? And maybe not for you personally, but just like as a whole.
I'm worried about medical devices, uh, especially especially if my company has done the cybersecurity for a medical device, and the medical device later is compromised because we missed something and somebody dies. That certainly keeps me up at night.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure we're very accurate and thorough and complete. The other thing that keeps me up a little bit is, we call it cyber physical systems. Like here in Phoenix area, there's autonomous driving cars.
Yeah.
In Dubai, they're pretty close to they're doing testing autonomous flying taxis.
Mm.
These devices can be, if they are hacked into, it can kill somebody. So if I'm in a Waymo, which is the autonomous driving car brand here, I take them a lot.
Do you?
And it has a vulnerability. Yeah, I take them all the time. I think they're much easier than dealing with Uber.
You gotta watch Maximum Overdrive, Christian. You have to. You're gonna love it.
Does it have autonomous driving cars?
Well, I think the alien.
All the cars are taken over.
Everything
you said,
is taken over, even gas-powered cars, which you're gonna be like, that doesn't even really make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're gonna love it.
Yeah, so I think of that scenario. What if I'm in this Waymo, somebody hacks into it, speeds up to like 150 miles an hour and runs into a telephone pole and kills me, right? And that's a plausible scenario.
Mm.
We just hope that the likelihood is very low because Waymo has done their job with cybersecurity.
Right. So this is kind of an arms race, right, between like the hackers and the cybersecurity professionals. Like, is the benefit on your side because you get to design the system, or not necessarily? Like, do you have like a big head start, or not necessarily with these things? Like, if you worked at Waymo and you're okay, this is super important, we have to make sure that no one could ever take this over. Like, how are you like going about thinking about that thing?
If organizations would design cybersecurity into their products, we wouldn't have as big of a problem. Most of the time, it's like, holy crap, we forgot about cybersecurity, and they're about to launch the product and they try to bolt it on at the very end versus
throw it on
design
at the end. Yeah.
And the other problem is software developers do not understand cybersecurity. I've met maybe 1 out of 100. They think they know everything, and they're very good at developing code and creating a product that functions properly, has the right user interface, but they don't understand cybersecurity, and it's not really taught in software development. So most of the problems are because of flawed code. So this is a challenge that we're a ways off, like decades from fixing.
Because it's almost like you have to get that into the curriculum that these young people who are learning coding and things. Well, now I'm sure you're way ahead of this. A lot of the code is also being produced by like AI, right? So there are these AI machines and methods that you can just say like, give me a code that, whatever does this function, and then it'll just spit it out. But that was created by a human that fed that information in. So
Right.
that's a kind of crazy one too.
Yeah, and it's even like when we have found like major ways in the systems, we've gotten like these kind of like arguments with the software developers. It's their system, their code, and they're like, "There's no way you could do that. You guys, there's no way you're making this up." So we have to like get on a Zoom call and actually demo what we did and how we got in their code in order for them to actually comprehend it.
Whoa. Well, it makes sense. It's like you built you built a house, and then Mr. Burglar, comes along and you're like, I can break into that. And the contractor's like, no, you can't. And you're like, no, I can. And they're like, no. And you're like, all right, well, I'm going to have to do it tonight. I'm going to have to break into the house. And
Yeah.
it's a bummer because I'm sure they're like, well, shit, now I have to do a whole bunch more work. Like this is like, a big process for me now that I have to go out and change all these things that I loved and things that worked really well, really well. And
Well, then also they think I did the same function on the last
ooh,
27 things I did,
ooh, yeah,
and those are already filled. you know.
ooh, yeah. That's a tough one. Yeah, how much software is out there that just is like dated and what worked then doesn't work now?
Yeah, I think I would say probably like 80%.
And what again? What are the like? Maybe I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around this. Like, what is the big fear? Like, let's say you got like me. We have an inventory management system. We actually developed this with a development team, so it's been a big process. So,
Hmm.
like, what's the fear of someone like getting access to that system? Is the biggest fear just like passwords?
The fear of like them getting into it.
Yeah, like let's say some hacker really wanted to get into our system, our
Hmm.
inventory management system. Like, what they're gonna, they're just gonna see inventory levels. It's not that exciting.
Oh, okay.
What?
You have to look at it like, what's the effect if they get into it, and when they get into it, what can they do? Can they steal data? Can they do a denial of service? Can they change the way it functions, like the alter the data, mess with the integrity of it?
Denial of service would be like they block us from logging in.
Yeah, and your system just no longer works.
Yeah. Is that what happened with the airline company? What's the company? You know the one I'm talking about now, that had the big like data issue a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's been several, but yeah, but I mean, we have to look at the use case, right? Like, if I have a life support system and I'm reliant on that system, and then someone does a denial of service attack against it and it no longer works,
Yeah.
then somebody can die. Now, if the system has, let's say, diagnostic data, it's an in vitro diagnostic system. It takes a sample of your blood or your tissue, runs it through the system, and then makes a determination of what's wrong with you and a recommended course of treatment. Like if you have sepsis, like your blood is toxic, and that system is been altered and tells the doctor that you do not have sepsis, in a couple hours you can die. So in that case, it's alteration or even denial. If the device is offline and they can't diagnose you, that's a problem as well.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but it sounds like denial of service is the big scary one, because then it's ransom, right? Like with what you just said, of course, like, not sending that necessary medical information is one thing, but I imagine if I have like, a device, a pacemaker, let's call it, and you can break into that and say, hey, I'm going to shut this off, in 24 hours if you don't send me like $1 million in Bitcoin. It's like, oh, geez, you have like a pretty hard decision to make, in 24 hours. Like, what do you do? Like, I'd probably try to get the Bitcoin.
Yeah, it depends on your objective. I think denial of service, if you're trying to make money,
Extract the money. Yeah.
with ransomware is a good way to look at it. I think if you're trying to injure somebody or kill somebody, it's more focused on integrity. Like we work with things like, in med spa, there's like devices that have a laser that will treat your acne, and it has a cooling mechanism so the laser doesn't burn your skin. We've been able to hack into those devices and turn the cooling mechanism off and turn the intensity of the laser on.
Whoa.
So you can really like severely burn somebody if you wanted to. And I go here where I am. I go to a cryo like the cryotherapy sometimes.
Yep.
And I recently I started thinking, I'm in there for like 2 minutes, like super cold, like negative 300 degrees or something. But I thought, what if somebody hacks this device and disables the door from opening while I'm in here? I'm gonna actually freeze to death, so like I'm like kind of paranoid to even go in that thing anymore now. It's like I start looking at the world through this lens.
Have there
It's a little
been
bit
like
scary.
have there been examples of this? Like maybe I just don't know about it. This seems like this is national news if something like this happens. Have you heard of stories of like people trying to hurt other people by these kind of cybersecurity attacks?
There's been examples of it, not intentionally. Like in cybersecurity, there's like directed attacks and non-directed. Directed is me attacking or targeting you specifically.
Yeah.
Non-directed, I have malicious code that just runs over the internet and tries to find whatever it can.
I see.
So there's been examples where non-directed attacks have compromised like drug infusion pumps. A drug infusion pump, like, controls the flow rate of some sort of drug that's being pumped into your arm
Yep.
via an IV. If this device, if someone changes the flow rate of something like morphine to maximum, you can OD on morphine and kill somebody. So there hasn't been any supposedly documented cases, but I think there's been actually cases that were classified as something else to prevent liability on a manufacturer or liability on the healthcare provider.
But based on what, I don't want to sound morbid or morose, but based on it sounds like what you know about these systems, it sounds to me like if you wanted to, you probably could find vulnerabilities in some of these systems and potentially do an action like that.
Yeah, I think there has to be a motive there and a will. The average number of devices, last time I checked, connected to a hospital bed is like 14 devices. So out of those 14 devices, how many of those have a vulnerability? And then if you wanted to do something, what could you do if you leverage that vulnerability?
Yeah, that's scary.
And some of the stuff you talked about, ransomware, that's been a big deal in healthcare because ransomware has hit various hospitals and all their systems are locked out. And you talk about if somebody actually died, this is a scenario. You've got ransomware, you have an ambulance showing up with a heart attack patient.
Yeah.
They show up at the hospital, all their systems are locked out. So the hospital has to like manually intake that patient, and every second counts because they had a heart attack. So if they went from intake of like 30 seconds to 3 minutes, that 2.5 minutes may make a difference on that patient's lives if they had something like a heart attack.
Well, yeah, I mean, who knows? Could they potentially like shut off a defibrillator or something like that? I would imagine that would be, an immediate impact.
Yeah.
Interesting. What is life changed like for you since you started in the field in 1993? Like, what are the big differences, or maybe what are the things that you didn't see coming when you started in 1993?
When I started in 1993, I did not understand what it was like to be a hacker. And then I trained myself. I took classes. I spent a lot of time becoming a hacker. And then I was like, man, this is so easy.
Really?
I thought this is like so complicated. But yeah, it's like, there's tools. There's like an operating system called Kali Linux that has all the hacker tools in it pretty much. I mean, you can write your own tools as well. But you just say, oh, here's a Windows system. You run this set of tools against it. It says, oh, there's a vulnerability. You run another tool, and now you're in that system as administrator, and you can do whatever you want. It's like, it's not always that simple, but I thought it would be much more difficult when I first started. I thought this has to be much more difficult than it really is. It's not as easy as like Swordfish in these movies they make it out to be to hack into random banks and everything.
Yeah, I'm in.
But it's a little more complicated than that, but it is still very simple.
So, did you think that it would take a lot more manual coding than it actually does take? I get is that kind of like what I heard you say there?
It takes almost zero coding.
That I think is the concern.
Because there's this thing called like Metasploit. It's like this framework where you run an attack, you get in with a vulnerability, then you pick which payload you want to deliver. You just select, I want to turn on the camera and record what they're doing. Oh, let's deliver that payload. You just like menu driven, pick the payload.
So it's just like graphical interface. You just get a click kind of.
Yeah, there's something called Armitage. It's like the graphical interface for Metasploit, exactly what it is. You just run all these tools against these computers. If you own one of them, it shows up like this lightning bolts around it, then you can just do whatever you want with it.
So how long would it take you to teach me how to hack? Like if you and I are sitting in a room and you want to get me, whatever, 70-80% of the way there.
If I want to teach you just how to do it kind of sloppily where you might get caught, probably like 30 minutes.
So like
if I want to teach you to do it stealthy where you won't get caught, probably like 30 days.
Okay.
Like 30 12-hour days.
Yeah, but so what you're saying is what I am afraid of is that if some person, doesn't matter if they're a young person, old person, somebody who just, they're in Nairobi, Kenya, they want to make a couple of bucks, they could learn this skill in like, you're sitting next to me, so you're going to abbreviate my learning curve, but maybe they could learn it in a day or 2 days or 5 hours. And then they could get out there and start compromising systems.
Yeah, they'll probably get caught, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the I don't want to say the fear, but my fear is always if someone's in another country, it's like, well, what do you do? Like, what do you do with that? Like, let's say they're in another country and, oh, someone in Nairobi, Kenya is actually compromising your system. Well, so what? We can't do anything about that. We're not going to go arrest them.
Well, Interpol and the FBI, they supposedly work together to do that. But yeah, that's the way around it. Like if I were to compromise your system and we're both in the US, I would probably try to compromise the system, let's say in Nairobi, one in Iceland, one in Brazil, and then go through all those.
Right. You
So
always.
then when you're attacked, it looks like it came from Brazil. So if you trace it back to Brazil, you have to say, oh, this actually came from Iceland. Then Iceland would have to say, oh, this came from Nairobi. And Nairobi would say, oh, this came from the US. The likelihood of someone like reconstituting that whole chain is very unlikely. Plus, all the countries would have to cooperate with each other.
Yeah, I listened to a great podcast with Lex Friedman and this hacker. He was the like number one most wanted hacker on the FBI's list. He was an American guy, and he said that every cybercrime starts with identity theft. He's like, you steal an identity, and then you go do all these crimes through that fake identity. I was like, damn, that's good. Like, so yeah,
Yeah.
you would steal an identity and or hack into someone else's computer and then do the hacking. That's tough.
That's why, like, when the FBI shows up at like some 85-year-old grandma's house, and it says,
yeah.
your computer hacked all this stuff. She's like, I don't even use the computer,
Yeah. Brett Johnson is his name. If anybody wants to listen to that podcast, very good, very good. Yeah, I bet you would like that one. It's like a long one too, like a 4 or 5 hour one.
Okay.
So, what do most people not understand then about cybersecurity? Like, what are the things that I would struggle to understand about this field that maybe is very apparent to you?
I think with cybersecurity, it's really about reducing the risk to a level that you find acceptable. It's like anything else in life. Like if you want to use Alexis or Alexa or whatever that thing's called, that's increasing your risk. If you want to automate your home, that's increasing your risk. So I think it's just understanding that there's risk and there are things you can do to reduce the risk, such as two-factor authentication, such as patching your systems, updating the systems, using WPA3 instead of WPA2 on Wi-Fi. It's just about educating yourself really on some of the main things to do. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to go buy like some fancy firewall and do all this other stuff. But you probably should educate yourself about phishing. It's a lot of education, and what that reduces the risk. It's like, I skydive, so people think it's risky, but there's things you can do to reduce the risk. You can wear a helmet. You can have 2 altimeters. You can be well trained. You can have a backup parachute. You can have an automatic activation device in case you're unconscious. It'll automatically deploy your reserve parachute. You can jump the right people. It's like anything in life. There's inherent risk, and there's no way to get rid of it unless you don't do the activity. Like if you go completely analog in your house, then yeah, you've eliminated your cybersecurity risk. But it's kind of hard to do in today's world, especially
it's
unless you have the old rotary phone or something or push button phone, which those still work. You can still do that, I guess. If you wanted to.
Well, TV. I mean, I guess you could like connect a cable. I mean, I don't know. Is it possible to hack in through that?
You could do, the HD TV over the air. You can still do that, and not even use cable. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but wouldn't that? Oh, you mean over the air?
Yeah, with an HD antenna. Yeah.
I see. So you're just picking up like
Again, it's like purely analog.
Yeah, that's crazy. What about these? What about phones?
Phones are a small computer, and I was just having a conversation with a team member the other day. I have an Android phone. I'm assuming you have an iPhone.
Is that intentional? I am an iPhone user. Is Android safer than iPhone? Safer than Google? Safer than any other option out there?
I don't know if they're necessarily safer. I think both Apple and Google have done a good job, like screening applications on the Play Store or the App Store. I think that where the problem comes into play is when you install an application, most people just click on next. It's asking you if it can have access to your mic, your camera, all these different things it doesn't need access to.
Mm-hmm.
So now people wonder, like, how does my phone know, or how does Facebook know that I would just have this conversation talking about a diamond ring for my girlfriend, and all of a sudden on Facebook I'm getting diamond ring ads? Well, maybe because you gave Facebook permission to listen, because you gave it permission to your mic. Sort of like Alexa, it's always listening, right?
Is that a real
So
thing? Are they listening to my mic and then getting my preferences from that, or is it just that I'm already giving them so much data that it's not that hard?
well, how does it happen in like that real time then? If you haven't typed it in,
I
you
don't
just
know.
vocalize
That's
it.
my question for you. I don't know about this, but I know this. I know that I have ran ads on Facebook. We're an e-commerce company. We don't do a ton of Facebook ads, but we do it where
Yeah.
people will go, they're listening to us. Look, this targeted ad at us. And it's just like, I just pick a lookalike audience of people who are interested in this topic. And it's like,
Of course,
you
that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different than something near real time.
yeah.
So I have an app on my phone. It's called Lookout. It's a security app. I ran it the other day. It tells me all the permissions everything on my phone has.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, why does this thing need permission to my mic? And I'll disable it. Why does this thing need permission to my camera? Some things do, like Facebook. You might take a picture and upload it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So there's some reasons, but if you don't do that, again, this goes back to configuration. Remove those permissions.
But yeah, some of those apps won't even let you. It's either all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us back to TikTok. You sounded like you had a pretty strong opinion on TikTok.
Well, I think TikTok has been a big campaign for getting our youth in our country to do certain things
Okay.
and be a certain way. It's a big, disinformation and misinformation campaign.
So is that your primary contention with it? Is that you feel like it is being directed by a different entity to sway the algorithm towards certain behaviors and
100%. Like if you're like 12 years old or 13 years old and you spend most of your time on TikTok and you see specific types of things on TikTok over and over and over, you're going to start thinking, this is the way the rest of the world is.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's happened.
What about from the cybersecurity perspective? That's sort of like a misinformation, disinformation, campaign. That's like
Sure.
psychological warfare, right? What about
Yes.
for like the cyber side of things? I have heard, and I don't know this to be true at all, but I have heard that TikTok is one of the most invasive apps that you could download. It gets access to basically everything on your phone, like all your location data, and maybe it
Yeah,
goes into your contacts, pictures.
It'll ask you all that stuff. Can TikTok access your contacts? Can it access your location when you install it, right? But most people just click next, 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 next. I don't have TikTok on my phone.
No, nor do I.
But yeah, I don't know if it, from what I understand, it does ask for all those permissions, which is egregious. It doesn't need to know all that stuff.
Right.
Does it really need to track your location all the time?
Right.
So now it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. I don't have to go to China and somebody plant a tracking device in my clothes. I just need to install TikTok.
Right.
Now they know where I am all the time. What's the difference?
Much easier. Much
Much easier.
Much lower cost. Less likelihood of getting caught doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. It's
And
scary.
the user consented that it's okay. Right.
So then, outside of the psychological portion of it, what would be your fear as a TikTok user, or even for that matter, a Facebook user, an Instagram user, a Twitter user? That if you have that installed on your phone, like what is the concern there for you?
The concern is, I guess, a couple fold, like the permissions. Like if I give Instagram persistent permission to know my whereabouts and to have my mic on versus when I'm just using it, that's a problem because now I've given someone else the ability to track me. And then you also have to look at like, what if somebody compromised Instagram or they're already compromised? Now, maybe the cyber criminal is tracking me, not just Instagram. There's that. And there's also the thing we talked about They have very good algorithms. So if you spend a lot of time on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, you're going to see the world through a very specific lens, and that lens has been sort of handcrafted for you. And that is drastically different than reality. And that's no different than the news. Like I've traveled to like 80 countries. I remember I went to Egypt when all this like terrorist activity was going on. I went there, nothing going on. I went to the pyramids. I was like one of two people there.
Yeah.
Because every American was afraid to go there, and they're like, "You're crazy," blah blah blah. I'm like, it's never as bad as it sounds. From my experience traveling, I think it's a way to control you and want you to stay in the country and live in fear, basically.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you saw Mark Zuckerberg was just on the Joe Rogan Experience, and
Yep.
Two really interesting things he talks about. One is just what you made mention of, like he talked about how they will track you across all of their applications, Instagram and Meta and WhatsApp. That if like you're deemed to be doing like terrorist activity, they'll take down all of your accounts, which makes sense because Joe's like, well, why would you take down all their accounts? And Mark reasonably was like, well, if you think they're doing a terrorist activity on Facebook, you can't let them in good conscience still do that on WhatsApp. Joe's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, but they have an immense amount of data on you, and they're subject to whatever they kind of want to do with that amount of data. Like they have their own internal policies. But then I'm sure you heard that like Mark basically said like the Biden administration like hammered him, essentially came in and was like, take down these memes, and he's like, no, we're not taking down satire. That's not going to happen. And then he said the Justice Department kind of started to go after him now. And actually,
it was more than just taking down the memes. It was also suppressing certain types of information,
right,
and not suppressing others, and altering like what people thought about COVID and the vaccine. I mean, it's a bunch of things. And we talked about Alexa. What if the government starts putting pressure on Amazon, and the same thing happens, right?
Well, Amazon's got a lot of government contracts, so between Blue Origin and AWS and all this. So I was kind of making those connections while you were talking about that. Like they play ball. Like all these companies, I think, generally play ball, because again, to what Mark Zuckerberg started to say, like if you don't play ball, like things go the wrong direction very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like the pressure is so immense, you almost have to do it, is what he was saying.
Yeah, and like you can't take an ideological stand, sort of, because it's like your company sort of rides on this thing.
Well, supposedly Elon with X now has enough money where he's like, go for it. But now I guess now he's becoming part of the government anyway.
Right.
So I don't know. That might open a whole other can of worms.
Well, that is something that people have said is like, maybe Elon has like, he already had like government contracts with SpaceX. So there was kind of like this weird like thing, like, are we like gonna let a billionaire who has government contracts donate to a political party that might put him back into government? Like this is kind of like a weird circular, like, are we okay with this thing? And I think it's totally a reasonable, stance to be like, I'm not sure if that is actually okay. Well, not to transition too much, but I know you're a published author, but all your books have like a lot of reviews on Amazon. So congratulations and kudos to that.
Well, thanks.
But you want to just talk me through the books that you wrote, and they seem like the two that I found are very different from each other.
They're very different. The first book is called The Smartest Person in the Room. It's about my experience with my first cybersecurity company and the problems I had and how I solved it. 99% of the problems I had in my company were because my staff lacked emotional intelligence. Cybersecurity in high-tech industries attracts like a certain personality type. High IQ or high rational intelligence. And everybody wants to feel significant. But if I am high IQ and I get my significance by being, quote, smarter than other people, then my ego is going to do what it can to protect that identity I've made up for myself. So I will find ways to prove I'm smarter than people, which in cybersecurity, that means talking over somebody's head, because if they don't understand what I'm saying, obviously I'm smarter. This is a theory, right, that people have. Or when I'm collaborating with a team, instead of like having an open conversation, I wait till someone says something that's not quite accurate, and then I make them feel stupid. This is a like I said, 99% of the problems in my company were because of these sort of things. With my clients, I had team members that would talk over a client's head and tell me like, oh, the client, they just didn't get it. And I'm like, as a business owner, I'm like, if our client doesn't get what we're telling them is wrong with their environment and how to fix it, what kind of service are we providing?
Right.
So that book is about bringing that emotional intelligence back in, and I applied some neurolinguistic programming to the chapters and the context, and like one as an example, like with communication, one of the NLP presuppositions is that the meaning of communication is the response you get. So if you're not getting the response that you desire, it shifts the ownership back to you to alter how you communicate. And what typically happens though is we just blame the other person for not understanding or getting defensive or whatever. We don't alter how we communicate. So it's really about that emotional intelligence.
Now, do you think that it was clearly particularly true in your industry where you have a certain type of person who's like doing the work? Do you think you've seen that in a lot of different industries?
I think I've seen it over the last 5 years become more of a general human condition.
Why do you think?
I remember, like here, I live in Tempe, and I remember like walking out from the parking lot to my unit, and there's a guy walking out, and I said hi to the guy, hey, how's it going? He looked right at me, and then looked away. Didn't even say anything.
Just didn't know what to do. Was not ready for that.
Well, it was like almost like he's got this attitude like he's better than everybody, and it just like pissed me off. I felt like just punching him. I'm like, what the hell? Like how much energy does it take to say, hey man, how's it going? Or good to see you again, or whatever. It's like why that? But he was probably thinking, again, it goes back to what I was saying. He wants to be significant by thinking he's better than people. So the way to prove that is like not acknowledging other people. It's like this general lack of emotional intelligence, I think, is exacerbated since COVID, where we're all afraid to interact with each other. We were like forced to wear masks and socially, distanced and all this garbage. I don't think we've quite got over that, and I'm not sure we ever will.
Yeah, I agree. You got to come spend some time in the Midwest. They'd have given you, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?
I used to live in St. Louis.
Yeah, that's good, man. What about your second book? Because that is a totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, my second book, The In-Between Life and the Micro, is more of a focused memoir about where I've got things wrong and where I've got them right, in the context of me. I'm, I guess, a high achiever. I don't know what I like to label myself, but in the past I would get so hyper focused on a macro level goal, like a big goal, like
sell the company,
doing an Ironman triathlon, building my company, writing my next book, whatever. I get so hyper focused that no matter what happened, I was going to do that goal. So I didn't really pay attention to what I call the micro moments, and several relationships fell apart because of that. My health fell apart, other things fell apart, and what I realized after like a lot of reflection and work and writing the book, because the book was transformational for me, I realized that if I had paid more attention to what was right in front of me, it would have informed me that this thing I thought I wanted to go after, I actually don't even care about. But I got so hyper focused on it, like doing the Ironman World Championship, like climbing mountains, whatever it is, that I just had these blinders on. And when I got there, I didn't feel fulfilled. I was like, okay, I did that. What's the next big thing? It's almost like this way to go through life without letting any emotion in, because you're just super focused. You could justify it. I'm just going to achieve all this stuff. And, if my relationship falls apart, that's a consequence, right? And now I'm trying to balance that much better.
Yeah, I think that's kind of ancient Stoic wisdom, right? And that was, I think, the Jim Carrey quote, right? Like, I wish people could get famous and make the money to realize that's not really what they were seeking the whole time. And the classic one is, well, that's easy for you to say, right? Because it's like, well, you made it, but you have to have someone who's gotten there to be like, hey, this isn't what you want. It's
Right.
impossible to have the person who's like, broke and in the gutter, and they're like, no, that's not what you want. You're like, yeah, it is. Yes, it is what I want. Trust me, that's what I want. Well, that's awesome, man. That's quite a journey. Christian, is there anything that we didn't cover in either the cybersecurity world or, about kind of your coming to understand more about, I don't want to say the meaning of life, but that's kind of what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I'm working on 2 books now. I'm almost done. One is on medical device cybersecurity to help solidify my brand as the market leader. My goal is to become the market leader this year. The other book is on about the story we tell ourselves,
Mm.
and I think we all have an inner narrative, and it's important to like consider that story and see if it is helping you or hindering you. And the book is about my own experiences and how to change that story.
Mm.
An example would be, someone might say, and I've heard this a lot, I'm someone that doesn't believe in divorce. That's their story.
Okay.
But they've been in a shitty marriage for 35 years. So their spouse doesn't like the marriage. They don't like the marriage. How is that story serving you,
Right.
really?
Right. It's something
That's just
you may not even know where you got that story.
exactly. Yeah.
You may have heard it sometime from someone you liked, and you go, yeah, I like that. And then you never stopped and actually renegotiated with yourself the idea that that's accurate.
Yeah. And with me, like when I had those blood clots, my initial story was, I'm grateful to be alive. And, I'm grateful that I made it. But then, like I said, I got depressed. I was like, the story changed to like, man, I feel caged and trapped, and I'm just existing. I'm not like doing anything I want to do. And I had to get out of that state and shift the story. Like, I'm going to reclaim my health. I'm going to go after big things. I think the world has things I need to accomplish. And I had to change that story. And that's the moment I threw those blood thinners across the room, was that when I actually embodied the new story.
How do you?
And that really changed my entire life. I could still be sitting watching reruns of Yellowstone, taking blood thinners and feeling depressed if I didn't change the story.
How do you coach people up on changing that story? Because from what I have heard and read is that sort of the science of like behavior change is actually like very tough. Like it's very difficult to get people to change their behavior.
Yeah.
And what I have heard, you can correct me because you've probably done a ton of research on this, is that a lot of times it takes like a spark, an event. Your wife walks out on you. You go, oh, I do need to lose weight, right? Like, how do you coach people up on like that mental framework, but also the behavior change that needs to come with it?
Yeah. So human behavior, people are typically driven by pain more than pleasure, right? So it's hard to coach somebody to go after something that will make them more happy or more fulfilled, when often the driving factor is like they have to hit rock bottom or have so much pain they're forced to change.
Yeah, pain avoidance.
Yeah. I've done a fair amount of coaching in the past. What I try to do is ask the right questions. A coach always asks insightful questions, and then try to get someone to think of what they want their future to look like. Like, what is a compelling future for me? Mm-hmm. And get them to embody that future, and then have clarity around it. I think there's a couple things that come into play. One is most of us don't know what we want, but we know what we don't want. So we get more of what we don't want.
Yep.
And if you can come up with a compelling future, like I want to, let's just say move from Ohio to California where it's sunny and I want to live by the beach, whatever. Let's just pick something. And I want to do that in 3 years. Okay, that's your future. Mm-hmm. Now let's come up with some clarity around that, because the other thing that causes people to not take any action is lack of clarity. The clarity could be, okay, what are the things that you need to do this year and year 2 and year 3 to make that happen? And let's break that down into, each month, each quarter, and each month, and each day. And then that gives someone a roadmap, and they're like, oh, okay, today I just need to do the small thing. Because if you just think about it as like this is a massive thing to undertake, but if you break it down to small things that don't take that much time, it's kind of like a couch to 5K, right?
Yeah.
it takes people like, all you got to do is go walk for 10 minutes the first day. But then pretty soon you're running a 5K, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you got to have clarity on what you want to do, like the 5K or move to California, the compelling future, like what that looks like to you, and then the clarity around it. Yeah.
Sounds like a very engineering-based approach to it, right?
Well, what is your approach?
To what? Goal setting and accomplishment?
To get someone to change their story, like we're talking about.
I don't know if I've found a compelling way to do that. I have a lot of guys and gals, mostly guys, because I don't give the girls flack about not working out. I just lay off that. Like when it comes to the company, I'm smart enough
That's
to
probably
know.
a good idea.
I'm smart enough to know that that's not like. But I'll give the guys in our office or in our warehouse, a little bit of like gentle shit. If like they're out of shape, and I'm like, hey, when are you gonna come work out with us? When are you gonna come train? We have a gym here in the warehouse, and me and like 3 guys frequent it. We have 40 people in the company, and we get like consistently like 3 to 4 people. So it's like 1 out of 10, right? But no, I haven't found a compelling way to get people to say, you know what, you're right, Alex. I am 100 pounds overweight, and I am, type 2 diabetic, and my knees do hurt, and my back does hurt, and my hips do hurt. Like, I need to get in here and do something. I have not really found a compelling way. Also, there's a little bit of like I'm your boss. Like, I'm not going to give you too much crap about this.
Sure.
Like, this is kind of like my personal professional line. If you want to do it, great, but I haven't found anything that is really, really helpful for people there.
So I had to come to terms when I was writing my the book about the story we tell ourselves, that like who my target audience is.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking to a woman I know that she keeps dating the same kind of men and having the same kind of problems. And I'm thinking, she's my target audience.
It's so obvious, right? So
But
obvious what you have to
the
do.
more I dug into it, I'm like, she's not my target audience because she's not ready.
Yeah.
Even though it's from the outside, it's like, okay, she needs to change who she is to attract something different, right? It's relatively simple. It's not easy, but she was not at that point where she had enough pain to want to change. It's almost like the people that would be interested in the book are already achievers trying to get successful or self-aware or evolved that want to get to the next level, or they're people that the timing happens to be right. There's that super painful moment that they're ready for change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Right. Sometimes the advice that high achievers need is not like our advice we're giving. Go harder, try harder. Like they're like they need the opposite. Kind of what you
Like,
made mention.
calm down.
Well, yeah, no, your second book, right? It's like you need
Yeah.
to like enjoy the process a little bit. You need to like maybe think about like, well, why do you want to be a billionaire? Like, well, what is the why? Like, what is the benefit there? Like, why do you need to seek that thing? What if you just have,
Yeah.
$2 million? Is that enough? What about 5, 10? Is that enough? So I'm with you. I think that it's tough to find people in the right time. And that's kind of why I asked, because, that guy who's overweight, it may take his girlfriend breaking up with him and calling him a fat piece of shit. And then he goes, all right, I'm ready. Right. But nothing I say is going to make that happen necessarily. Or maybe I could, but I haven't found it. So.
Yeah. Human behavior is interesting. It's very interesting. I've done a lot of work and had a life coach for, I don't know, like 5 years now, and coach people. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, people are interesting. I'm just trying to work my human experience. I'll worry about other people's later.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this. This is fantastic. Covered a lot of really cool things. I learned a ton. I'm not sure if I feel more at ease or less at ease after all of this. I think I need 2-factor authentication, and I need to do away with WPA2. Was that it?
Yeah, upgrade to WPA3.
All right,
Yeah.
we got some actionable insights.
It could just be a setting. Your router might support it,
Yeah.
But then if you have older devices that don't support WPA3, then you can't upgrade. So yeah, this is a challenge, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Where can people find you and check out your stuff? And if they just so happen to be in the medical device world and they need some help with cyber, where can they check you out there?
Yeah, for medical device, cybersecurity, they can go to my company website, bluegoatcyber.com. For other things, they go to my personal brand website, christianespinosa.com. My books are on Audible. Khalil Griffith narrated it. He did Trump's The Art of the Deal and one of Tim Ferriss's books.
Hey, that's good
Yeah.
company to be in.
Yeah.
And
And
like
they're on Amazon as well.
your
Yeah.
books have fantastic reviews, and you have a lot of reviews. I've talked to a handful of people who wrote a book, and it's like, no disrespect, because I don't have any of the things that I've written out there, but they'll have 15 reviews, and I'm like, okay, well, and I get it. It's hard to get traction on a book, but you're
You got to spend like 10 times more effort on marketing the book than it took to write the
Yes,
book.
yes.
It's like everyone thinks writing the book is the hard part. It certainly is, but marketing the book is the harder part, in my opinion.
But you have over 300 reviews on one of your books, so you definitely have done a great job there.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you. You have a great rest of your night.
All right. You too,
Thanks.
Alexander. Thank you.